there were some quite extraordinary DEI trainings that took place in your workplace. Can you describe some of those trainings? Describe some trainings that you attended, and then maybe we can get on to the specific one that you leaked the details of to Quillette, which upset and embarrassed the people back at the Ombudsperson's office.
Yeah. The first one that I remember was just probably only like 2 weeks after I'd joined the office. There was a presentation by on trauma-informed approaches to dealing with complaints. It was presented by a lawyer who billed herself as a trauma-informed lawyer. So it's all about, speaking to people and realizing that, they've been through trauma, and approaching everything that way. If they're being upset, that's the reason why. If, they're calling you because they're might be in jail or involved in crime or addicted to drugs or anything like that, you got to look at it through that trauma-informed lens. So some of that's actually pretty useful and pretty true. And I took a lot of things away from that. At one point, the presenter was Indigenous, and she showed a video, an Indigenous hip hop group, basically saying that they were frustrated with Canada and they were sick of sort of, from what I took from it, sort of performative things from, white Canadians. And then she asked people to comment on it. And I commented on it, she said, what do you think they're saying? And I said, I think they're sick of performative things like such as land acknowledgements, which are, they might make the people saying it feel pretty good about themselves, but it doesn't do anything. Like here in Canada, in the places where Indigenous people live, the reserves, a lot of them still don't have clean drinking water, which is a problem that's been known for so many years and still hasn't been solved. There's unresolved land claims in the courts that have been going on forever and ever and ever. We've still got huge disparities and poverty and all sorts of every kind of sort of indicator of well-being and stuff, right? And getting up at the beginning of your team meeting and acknowledging the land and the traditional water keepers and that you're an uninvited guest doesn't really do it, anything at all to solve any of that. And the presenter was actually like, she took that in stride and said, yeah, those are all valid criticisms. Actually, a lot of Indigenous people, feel the same way and rolled with it. So I thought, okay, I'm here in an office and they're presenting a lot of this stuff, but it seems to be okay to provide feedback and stuff like that. I had a few staff members who said, hey, that was a good comment. Like, thanks for saying that. So I thought I was in a fairly free thinking place, and I noticed like in the office too, there would be a lot of heated debates about fairness issues all the time. And people didn't seem shy about speaking their minds, even if they're speaking to somebody senior than them. But there was more and more of these sort of ideological training sessions. And the one where I first got myself into trouble, there was a presentation by a lawyer, a trans lawyer, non-binary, going by they, them pronouns, who's like a fairly significant person in the legal community here in Canada. She's appeared at the Supreme Court of Canada, billed as an expert in sort of transgender legal issues. So she gave a presentation that was really a lot of stuff that I would say is like, just plain nonsense, that, biological sex is just a social construct. The different gender roles that exist were, colonially imposed on First Nations people here in Canada. They didn't really exist before that. That we were obliged to treat anyone by their expressed gender, not their sex, in any situation, including policy situations and legally and stuff like that. So all sorts of, we've heard, any Quillette listener, they know the standard rigmarole, really. Mm-hmm. And when there was time for questions, I put up my hand and I tried to ask a question, the gist of which was, this is all super contentious. How do we speak about this respectfully? Because there's a lot of people who believe that sex is an important thing for policy. and it's still relevant. And we need to be able to talk about that without people who raise that being called bigots, because there's a lot of people who feel that way, and there's very logical reasons for them to do so. And the presenter just went up one side of me and down the other, just basically interrupted me, let me know that she wasn't going to tolerate the bigotry that I was doing, equated it with being racist to Black women and keeping them out of bathrooms, raised the specter of genocide and dog whistles and all those things. So I shut my mouth, said thank you for berating me, basically, and was quiet about it. I had a few people reach out to me in the office and say, I think you were right. But a few weeks after that, I was disciplined for it. I was called into a meeting, and I was let the powers that be let me know that wasn't okay. You can't question these things.
We actually have so we have recordings from that, I think, or yes, we have a recording of your interaction with this person who I think her name is. I'm not going to use they them pronouns because
no, because
I'm
they're
a non-believer. I'm a non-believer and non-binary, and I think my religious views on that should be respected. But her name is Adrienne Smith, I believe. She's also.
So I guess first I'd like to say that I'm taking a lot of what you're saying to heart, and especially in practical terms where the rubber hits the road, I'm thinking of a lot of ways that I can use this, especially in my writing and the way I can write. I can see a lot of practical changes, so I appreciate that. I'd also like to just raise that a lot of the language we're talking about and the underlying assumptions are contested. I'm thinking about the word woman and mother in particular, which you're defining based on gender, but a lot of people are still defining based on sex. And I think that's important. There's a lot of people, including a lot of women in my life that are very important to me, think that in some situations, sex is the relevant thing to be looking at, not gender, when it comes to policy and the terms they prefer to be referred to as. But what really concerns me is that all the people that tell me this in private, they would never say it in public because they're concerned that they're going to be labeled as bigots. And
are your racist friends a little mad that they're not allowed to say racist things?
Well, I mean, there's kind of, that maybe illustrates it a little bit, right? These are charged and emotional conversations, right? And I think that reasonable people can disagree on some of these
things. I'm going to stop you right there. This is not a question about a disagreement of terms or something that can be politely debated. This is a dispute between people who are seeking justice and people who would prefer that we were dead. And I would like to be accessible and gentle and patient to people who are constantly disparaging the fact that I'm a valid human with legal rights. But sometimes I lose my cool about it because it's not cool. And a focus on sex that makes sex the dominant narrative and defining point has been recognized by the courts as a feature of contemporary transphobia. We used to say that white women weren't going to share the bathroom with Black women because they would give us syphilis. This same argument is now mobilized by women who say trans women will be dangerous to me in the toilet. And there's a very serious and hateful underlying narrative between some of these things that are expressed gently, often under the dog whistle of seeking a respectful debate. And I'm past the point of seeking a respectful debate about who I am when hundreds of us are murdered every year and many of us are excluded from basic public services. And I have patience for the women in your life who want to own the word woman. I think every woman should be able to earn the word woman. If you're doing that in a way that excludes trans women, then your feminism needs some work.
I think you addressed my point. Thank you.